Hello everyone. Today I'm going to show you best 20 skills in the game. And before I start, I'm just gonna say this is just my opinion, which skills I think is the best for now, first 20 of them. And I'm gonna try to explain why I think that they are best. If you might have some different ideas than me, but I think this video will be pretty accurate of what is best and what is not. And if I'm gonna start with top and I'm gonna finish with the top 20 in the end. And this might be surprising for you, but I think the best top number one skill in the game is Dance of Fujin. I don't imagine any build in the game in PvP that doesn't use this skill to play. It's super useful. It has 12 cooldown and it reduces 5 cooldowns of all the other skills. So I don't think there is anything else to say about this. It's just super useful and lets you use skills more than once in a game. Second place, I would give this to S32, which is the only taijutsu that chaoses your opponent. And another good thing about this is that it also has the CP drain effect, and it has 10 cooldowns, which is super low for a jutsu. You can basically spam this jutsu as much as you like in a game. If you have this one and this one in your skill set, you can just do this once in every 3 turns. And it can be rebounded since it's a taijutsu, so I think this deserves a number 2 spot. Number 3, I think without a doubt, is Susanoo. And again, I think almost 100% of the players use this in their builds. It increases your damage, it decreases the damage taken for 5 turns, which is a lot, and it also reduces 15% HP from the target. Also, it doesn't have a really high cooldown, or only 14, which is not low and not high, it's kind of a middle. And this 15% reduction against tanks is very useful as well. Because they don't really and especially if they carry S3 PvP weapon, this is super useful. One bad thing about this is it's a genjutsu and its effects can be rebounded if the opponent has darkness, but nevertheless this is one of the best jutsus in the game. Number 4 is Dragon Punch, which is basically same as F32, and it's better in some ways and not good in other ways. First of all, its effect is lock, which means if the opponent is has less than 50% health, it's gonna do the lock, so they can't do anything. Or if it's higher, if the HP is higher than 50%, it just reduces the damage by 100%. So they can't deal damage to you, but they can use anything, talents or any skills. So that's why it's a little bit worse than the chaos, because you can, if you want your enemy to be locked, fully locked, they need to be less than 50%. But it has higher damage than the S32, and also it has same 10 cooldown, which is super good. And also the CP drain effect is 50% comparing to 33%. So this is one of the best jutsus, and I think almost everybody uses this in the PvP. This top 5 is Sekizo, and I think this is the one of the best ways to counter dodge and any wind builds out there. It has ridiculously high damage, and it also has really good effect restriction. The only side effect here is you lose 10% HP plus 5% HP since it's a taijutsu, so you basically lose 15% of your HP, which sometimes can be a lot, because if you're on low HP and you really need to use this skill, you can't, because you're just gonna kill yourself. However, this is still one of the best jutsus ever. It's also good against tanks as well, because it has high damage and the restriction and the disable charging. It's really good effects in the game. So top six, I think, is Red Flash Jutsu, and some people might argue here, but I think this is one of the, I think this is the best disperse skills in the game, because it purifies you and also disperses the target. So imagine a scenario like this, that your opponent has Susanoo, for example, and they disperse you with Weaken Disperse. You can use Red Flash, you're gonna purify yourself from Weaken, and you're gonna disperse their Susanoo all in one turn. And this can be applied when you're blind and your opponent has a buff and everything. So like, this is super useful. It's like the ability to purify yourself is very strong now in the game, and also to disperse, it's good. It also doesn't have really high cooldown, and the damage is pretty high with the jutsu as well. I think top 7 should be Infinite Potential, of course the maxed out version of it. It increases your agility by 40%, which is huge buff, especially if you're glint. This additional 40% agility is really high. You can get double turn pretty soon, and you can use this double turn to outplay your opponent. And also it reduces cooldown of your jutsus by 3 turns, which is again, I think this cooldown reduction is one of the best effects in the game. And combined this one with Dance of Fungin, you can basically spam anything you want. You can spam this, you can spam this, you can spam Sekizo, or any of the disperse in the game. You can spam a lot of things with using this too. So I think this deserves the top 7 place. Top 8, I think it's obvious that evasion would be in would be top 10, because every dodge build, every wind build, it doesn't matter if it's a Byakugan, Sharingan, Glint, or anything else, it uses evasion as their #1 jutsu. So while tanks don't use this, I think all the other wind users use this. So I think it deserves top 8 spot in this list, and I don't think I need to explain a lot on this. Basically everybody knows what this does as well. Let's move on to the top 9 till 16. So I think Deferred deserves top 9 place, and I don't think it's one of the best jutsus here, because the internal injury for 3 turns, which cannot be purified, or cannot, like, it's not purifiable. That 3 turn internal injury sometimes can be the end of the player if they do not know how to use this skill well. I still think that it's one of the best skills in the game, and using Defer in a lot of scenarios have saved my life and won against my opponent. However, I think there are jutsu stronger than it, so that's why I'm giving it the number 9 place. Advanced Soul Impermanence, so number 10. This is one of the most useful jutsus in the game. Doesn't matter if you use it against tank or use it against a non-tank user. It just does ridiculous amount of damage, almost 20% max HP damage, plus 515 regular damage, and it also purifies yourself. And in a meta when a lot of people using blinds or some other negative buffs against you, or having a jutsu that purifies you is really useful. And while it purifies you, it does really high damage to your opponent. This jutsu is especially really useful against tank users who bring some damage reduction weapons. You can just ignore the weapon and reduce their max HP by 18%, which is a lot. And one more benefit for this jutsu is that you can use the jutsu against bosses, and I think this has the highest max HP reduction in the game, so that's why it's also really good. Top 11, I think Healing Hellfire is a good jutsu. It increases a lot, it recovers a lot of HP, 1000 HP every turn, and debuff resist for 4 turns. Some other buffs like this are usually 3 turns and recover less HP than Healing Hellfire, but this one I think is the best out of all of them. That's why I'm giving it top 11 place, and it also has 14 cooldown, which is again not really high. Top 12 place I think is Sword, this Chaos Jutsu from S3 PvP Champ Rewards. and it's a 3-turn chaos, and this is the best 3-turn chaos jutsu in the game, and the reason for that is that it has the lowest cooldown of all of the other ones, because it has 16, which is not low, it's still pretty high, but all the other 3-turn chaos jutsus have 18, and those two less cooldown it's a pretty big deal. But it's also a genjutsu, so I don't really like using this against darkness players, because if it rebounds, you just getting chaos for 3 turns, and sometimes it's gonna be deadly if it rebounds for you. Number 13. I think Sakura deserves the 13th place, because a lot of wind users use Sakura against each other, and also non-wind users to use Sakura attention to counter Byakugan or some other dodge users. And there are some other jutsus that do the attention, but I think this is the best because it also purifies you, and the attention is for 4 turns. All the other ones do the attention for 3 turns, and sometimes that one extra turn like is super useful for you in PvP. And this one has cooldown 18, which is really high cooldown. However, that's why it's not like top on the list, but I think top 13 is a good place for this jutsu. Ultimate Beast Mode, top 14. This is a really good jutsu if you are a wind user, because it increases your damage, and also it applies the Serene Mind on you, that basically if the enemy damages you, they're gonna take all the damage instead of you. And 75 damage increase is pretty good for 3 turns. It also doesn't use a lot of chakra, and its cooldown is relatively normal, 14. So that's why I'm giving it number 14 in the list. S50 Jutsu from Clan Rewards, I think deserves top 15 place in this list, because it's like, I would not say it's one of the most useful, but the effect of this jutsu is like really good, and in some cases it can be super useful. It also has good amount of damage, really low cooldown, and reduces 70% of CP. And increases the target jutsu cooldown by 1. This is especially like super useful. It is basically the same as Glint, one of the Glint talent jutsus, but this also reduces 70% of the CP and has a ridiculously lower cooldown. This is, as I was saying, this is particularly useful if you play against Sharingan player and they have a low HP before their second life. You use this jutsu, they go to the second life, but their jutsu cooldowns will be reduced by 1, so they can't use jutsu on their first turn of the second life. So basically they can't also use the Sharingan talent, so it's pretty useful in that case scenario, but also in all the other ones. If you're playing this CP drain build, this is the one of the top jutsus you can use. So top 16, I put S17 in top 16 list because I just like this jutsu, but I still think that the damage and the cooldown and the effect of this one is also really good if you're carrying the CP drain build, or if you're 8 gates talent. It also benefits from the increased taijutsu damage passive from the talent, and 75% CP reduction is a lot, and it also applies to weaken for 50% of 3 turns. It can be, sometimes can be really useful for some scenarios. Another jutsu that is similar, like basically the same as S17, is S22. As you can see, it has the same effect. So I would give S17 and S22 like basically same top 16 spot in this list. Let's move on for the last 4 jutsus of the top 10 list. Number 17. I think Lava Rasengan is really good for top 17 best jutsus, because it has high damage and super low cooldown for the disperse. I think 12 is the lowest, I mean 10 is the lowest for the disperse jutsus that exist in the game, which is this one. Let me show you real quick. So 10 cooldown for this disperse is the lowest in the game. However, this jutsu doesn't really have any negative effects that is applied to the target. It just disperses and that's it. So that's why I think Lava Rasengan's internal injury for turn is super useful against some of the HP regen tank users. It has low CP, it has low cooldown and high damage. It uses a high amount of chakra, which is one of the bad things about this one, and another one is that it's a genjutsu, so it can be rebounded. So I did not give this jutsu a top place in this list because of those two bad things, chakra and the being a genjutsu. But other than that, it's a super useful, super high damage and really good effect. S45 jutsu, I don't think this is one of the most useful jutsus in every scenario, but in some of the scenarios this can be a deadly jutsu against your opponent. First of all, it has high damage, it's a taijutsu, it has low cooldown, and it reduces opponent's health by opponent's chakra by 50%, and it applies chaos for 1 turn. So let's imagine a scenario that if you are a fire user and you just want to do as much damage to your opponent as you can. So this one, like with fire, like any fire builds out there, you can just use this and it does a ridiculous amount of damage. Your opponent's CP is reduced and they are like chaos for 1 turn. So basically you can then use another high damage jutsu after this. So it's basically like a step between killing your opponent fully. This might not kill your opponent, but it's gonna give you an advantage in a fight before killing the opponent if you are a fire based build. This also can be good for with 8 gates talent, because if you want to finish your opponent off and you can't really deal the full damage that you want to kill your opponent, but if you want to do like a small damage and then you can kill them, you can use this one on your opponent. You deal that amount of the damage, small damage, then they can't do anything, they can't heal, they can't apply some buffs, and then you finish them off after 1 turn. Tog is another buff that recovers HP to you every turn and purifies you for 3 turns. It has a relatively good cooldown and can also be used for the whole team, so this is also useful in 2v2 PvP if you play, or some boss against boss battles. If you have friends recruited, it's gonna heal everybody in the team. And it's it's also super useful in PvP just because it has a debuff resist and heal, and it can heal you up to not maybe full but a significant amount if you need some HP to survive. And the last one in the list, I think, is the Ultimate Life Recovery. This is the max upgraded version. It instantly purifies you and recovers you a good deal of HP and chakra. And as I said, in this meta now, the ability to purify yourself is really important, because a lot of people are carrying weaken, blinds, and negative buffs like that. So it's really useful to do the purify. Sometimes it's also useful to purify yourself against lock. And also this jutsu is super useful for tanks as well that have over 7,000 HP. 25% of that is a huge amount, and all this sometimes can be a lifesaver in that kind of scenarios. And that's it for the top 10 list. You can see all the jutsus I talked about here, starting from top 1 to top 20, and I based this list on PvP usefulness, not against boss modes or anything, just on PvP. And I hope you're gonna like this, and I hope it's gonna be informative to some of the new players or some of the returning players who don't really know what new deals are out there. And I'm also gonna make the same video about top 20 best weapons in the game and top 20 best back items in the game later on, so please stay tuned, and thank you for watching.